Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm excited to announce to you guys that I have completed my setup and I have all the cameras, all the lights I need to have a beautiful video and showcase some of my books to you guys. Right now I'm still going to be making test videos, trial videos, because there's some more work I want to do before I release videos on my business channel. So without further ado, I want to get into it because I promised a friend of mine and he's expecting this because I promised it to him. So I'm going to show him. I don't even think he's played Warhammer Fantasy, because what happened was they got rid of this entire game, and taking consideration they built their company on this game, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and what that is it's a fake medieval universe, right? We have orcs, goblins, trolls, giants, vampires, all this stuff, and humans are also in the mix, and they have a big empire, a big strong empire, but they're constantly under attack from all fronts by evil monsters who kill and destroy. So it's a really grim universe, but they started back in, I want to say, the late 70s. But either way, the point is they scrapped the game Warhammer Fantasy and they transitioned it into something called Age of Sigmar, which is loosely based on Warhammer Fantasy, but in actuality they really based it heavily gameplay wise on Warhammer 40k, which is a futuristic version of Warhammer Fantasy. So essentially they made a lot of success with Fantasy, and then they made the futuristic version with 40k, and then that was even bigger success, and that was taking off stronger than Fantasy, I think, on the worldwide market. And then eventually, what was it, 2015 or 16, they discontinued this game right here, Warhammer Fantasy, and then went on the Age of Sigmar. And I'll show you the difference between the two games a little bit here. And it might be new for my friend. I'm not sure if he ever played Fantasy, but there's a new generation of people coming up who only play Age of Sigmar, and they never even played Fantasy. And I bitch and complain because they took out my game. I love playing this game. I kind of grew up on it, playing with a lot of friends, and they completely removed it. And a lot of the models, a lot of the models got completely ruined, and I don't even think they have rules for them in the new game. Anyways, enough bitching about that. This is probably one of the first wargaming books I ever owned and I've become familiar with, and it's been a while since I've looked at it in depth, but what I'm going to do for this video is flip through the pages and show you guys what's going on in the book. And without further ado, let me get rid of myself, or make me smaller at least. And let's make sure we get the lighting and everything here. So you open up, and what they have here is a picture of miniatures. So these are all painted figurines, professionally painted by Games Workshop, which is a company who makes this game. They have their team of people who do the example miniatures. So these things are painted very well. But what you have here is an orc army occupying the fort. And then the humans I told you about, the Empire, that's them here on the attack. So you can see the armies about to clash. And down here you have the Goblins, who are allied with the Orcs because they're a relative species. The Goblins are always bullied by the Orcs, always forced to do things by the Orcs because they have a culture of violence, incredible violence, where the only thing that matters is brute strength. So the stronger you are, the higher you rise and eventually become a warlord and whatnot, and that's what we have here on the right. Well, that's more of an orc war boss. I don't know if that's a warlord, but definitely is a war boss. Oh, and then these are night goblins. In particular, they're not just goblins, they're night goblins, and you can tell by the dark hoods they're wearing. And they're fighting lizard men, reptile creatures. And you can see here these guys flying around with the chain balls. The lore behind them is they're drugged out night goblins, and they are given an intoxicating mushroom brew and held back by all their teammates because they go crazy when they drink this. And then when the time's right and the enemy approaches, they give them the ball and chain and push them in the general direction of the enemy. So they're flying at the enemy. But the catch is, and this is one of the big differences between Fantasy and Age of Sigmar, in Fantasy you had a lot of stuff, random stuff happen, and maybe even in Age of Sigmar they still kept this random aspect. I'm not sure, but we could even look into it because I got the books right here. Anyways, these things are hard to control, and they kind of move on their own after the first round, so they could end up coming back into your own army and crushing your own people. But the thing, it doesn't really matter too much about that, is they're just goblins and they're expendable. So you want to throw these things into strong enemy units with expensive, heavily armored people, because for the point value, you're going to kill a lot of points, and if they kill your own guys, it's not a problem. They're just goblins. And a little bit more on this before we continue is over here you can see some trolls. Those are rock trolls. And over here are squigs. But we'll get more into that and get off the first page here because this is taking a while. So we have our table of contents, of course, and it talks about the Green Horde, which is kind of a little bit what I talked about. Orcs, goblins, wolves, snotlings, which are like mini goblins, trolls, giants, wyverns, chariots, pump wagons. But we'll talk about all that when we get there. And then greenskin magic. Greenskins a nickname for orcs, goblins, snotlings, so the greenskin races. Shiny stuff is their way of saying magical items. Muster in the Green Horde. This is the army list. So over here you have the information and the lore behind the troops, and over here you have the strict point values and how they're incorporated into the game. And after that, it talks about painting them. It talks about the warlords, the heroes of the army, the Greenskin battle, Horde of Orks. I don't know what that is, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. That's not important. It looks like we have a nice map here. See if I could open this up so you guys see everything. A map, and it looks like it has some letters. I'm not going to read this, but maybe, yeah, you could if you want. And the picture's really nice. But yeah, just talking about some lore, probably people talking about how scared they are of getting killed by goblins and orcs and all that stuff. All right, over here you have special rules for the Green Horde, which the biggest one is animosity. And remember when I told you the greenskin culture is all about violence and power? Well, the only reason why the greenskins don't take over the world is because they're too busy fighting with each other. And that's represented in the animosity rules, where the units might attempt to attack each other instead of attacking the enemy, or they might squabble, or they might yell and shout. They could do a couple things instead of attacking the enemy. And that's definitely not in Age of Sigmar. That's a random aspect. And you see that table right here. That's definitely not in Age of Sigmar anymore. 100% gone. So they're really reduced. And it happened in a lot of video games too, including, it's been a long time since I played League of Legends, but I remember they did the same thing, and they started removing the random aspects of the game. And it started with dodging attacks. And then, yeah, well, anyway, that's not about League of Legends, but the animosity table. So what you do for each unit is you're going to roll 6-sided dice, which is a regular sided dice. You know, when you get Monopoly, or I don't even know if you use dice in Monopoly, but regular dice, the one you play craps with. And you roll one, and if you get, let's see. So I actually forgot the rule, but this is, if you get animosity, I think that's a 1 out of 6 chance, then you got to roll on this chart right here. And if you get a 1, it looks like your unit actually charges a friendly unit, turns around, faces, full engage and everything. A 2 through 5, which is obviously the most I can't think of the word, most probable result, because you have 4 options on it, is a squabble, where they just do nothing, throw rocks, and it just wastes that unit's turn. And then on a 6, we'll show them, and it pretty much buffs that unit, and they have the need to show off, so they charge an enemy unit, and I think they get bonuses against it. Over here we begin the lore and the description of the army itself. So we have multiple kind of orcs, as you can see on this page. Regular orcs, black orcs, which are the biggest and the strongest and the best armed and armored. Big guns, which are essentially just big orcs, ones that have grown longer, because they've lived longer. Orcs grow throughout their entire life, so the ones that live through more battles get bigger, and these ones form up into their own units. And then savage orcs, where most orcs are definitely savage. Well, all of orcs are savage compared to human culture. The savage orcs even make the regular orcs look civilized because they're running around with, you can see them here actually, they're running around with war paint, no clothes, primitive weapons, the whole 9 yards there. The orcs ride boars, not horses, so they're like bigger version of the wild boar, more ferocious. And you can see there, the boars have their own stat block and attacks. And then you get to the goblins, and they're broken down here to goblins and night goblins. Talks a little about them. They're pretty much right here: small, green, vicious, mean-spirited. They'll stab you in the back, but if it's a fair fight or if they're going to lose, they're going to cower and run away unless an orc's there to force them into battle. Here it talks about the Fanatics, which are the guys who get drugged up and run around with a ball and chain, like I told you about. And one of the huge differences between Fantasy and Age of Sigmar right here. Take a look at this page on the right. That's the entire rule block from the Fanatic, an entire page of text. Now for comparison, I'm actually going to grab the Age of Sigmar book right now, and hopefully it won't take too long. But give me 1 second. Might be able to find it. Just want to show you guys the difference in complexity, and that's really what it was. They've changed the games to make them easier and more understandable, whereas they used to be a game for intelligent people, you know, and that was literally in some of the books, at least in Dungeons and Dragons, it said this is a game for people who want to think outside the box, who want to learn the rules and do all this stuff, which makes it more fun, more complex game. And it's not like you have to be super smart to learn it at all. It's not super complex, and with time, anyone can learn it. But they condensed that into this. So right there, that doesn't even really mean anything. It changed into that. So overall, they just made the game a lot more simple. And here we have the Night Goblin Netters, which are essentially goblins who have nets, and the nets have weights on the end of them so they could throw them, and they tie people down, and they run up and try to throw a net over you while their buddy tries to stab you in the back. So they're always really seedy fighters, the Night Goblins. Any goblins. Night Goblins, squig herds. Yeah, squigs are an animal that coexist alongside the greenskins, and they actually eat the greenskin dung. As disgusting as it is, they eat the dung, and in turn, the greenskins eat them. And there's actually a lot of different types of squigs, especially in the older games for 40K. There's a lot of kind of squigs, and they kind of condense it down, but these are the big ones that are rideable or herdable. And so they pretty much gather these things up and prod them at the enemy. We see snotling swarms. These are, oh, that's a wolf. Anyways, there's no picture of the snotling swarm yet, but snotling swarms, they are smaller than goblins. They're just barely intelligent. Often they find themselves snacks for orcs and goblins when there's nothing else to eat, and they're pretty much worthless, and they're just thrown in for fodder to take some arrows to get in the way, add confusion. Down here we have the goblin wolf riders. So instead of boars or horses, the goblins ride wolves, and forest goblins, which I think they were in this book later on, but forest goblins, another kind, they ride spiders, so we'll see if we'll get to that. Trolls over here, they're not a race of greenskin, but they have a like mind, and generally they're stupid, so they could be coerced or bribed into fighting for the greenskins, and they also like fighting in general, so it's pretty easy to get them on board. And there's two kinds, river trolls and stone trolls. They both have a vomit attack. Giants, kind of the same story as trolls. They're not greenskins, but it says here giants and greenskins have a long history of association, and it's common to find greenskin hordes that include a giant brought along to add weight. So pretty much if a warlord has enough money or food or whatever, they could bribe a giant to come give him the stuff, and hopefully the giant's going to get more when he wins the battle. Here we have wyverns, which are essentially a cousin of the dragon, a nasty animal. One of their telltale features you can see here in the picture is a spike, a poison spike at the end of their tail. That dragons don't have that. And only the most fierce war boss could get the respect of a wyvern, and they have to be captured as eggs, I believe, and brought up and completely broken in, and even then, only a war boss has the might. Over here, chariots and pump wagons. I guess we talk about the pump wagons. The chariots, if the goblins ride it, it's being pulled by wolves, and if the orcs have one, it's being pulled by boars. But the pump wagons is a snotling. Remember the snotlings I told you about, the really stupid ones? I forget the lore behind it, but the snotlings are able to piece together, and they don't know why they're piecing it together, and really no orc knows why they're doing it. It's something embedded into them, and I could get into exactly why that is in a different video. I could go on a whole video about orc lore, but essentially a pump wagon, we kind of need a picture of it here to show you, but yeah, let me wait for a picture. It's kind of a hard one to describe, a pump wagon. It's pretty much a chariot that's driven by a series of accordion-like pumps that these little goblins are jumping on and pushing down. And it's kind of like another version of the Goblin Fanatic, where this thing's out of control and just trying to run over people. That's really what it is. Over here we have spells. This is where we start getting into the magic, which is pretty powerful. The orc magic. The two orc gods, which are one and the same, is Mork and Gork. You can see them here. The Hand of Gork is an interesting spell. You could pick up one of your units and move it somewhere else on the battlefield, which could be incredible for flanking, getting behind the enemy, or getting out of harm's way. And then another spell I'll talk about that's funny, which is over here on the right, the Foot of Gork. That, let me see if I have the template. I think it's in the back of the book here. It is not. Huh. Either way, the foot of the orc god comes down from the heavens, or wherever the god is, and steps on enemy troops and crushes them. So that's a good one. Shiny stuff, it's magical items. Blah, blah, blah. Mustering the Green Horde. It's just kind of talking about the requirements for forming an army and putting it out there. And then it goes into the actual unit descriptions, and you can see here, compared to an Age of Sigmar book, I really like the way this is written out, and it's got the points and everything right here. And for you Age of Sigmar players, you know what I'm talking about when they don't have the points next to the model, and you gotta flip to the back of the book, or another book. Actually, I think they started putting the points in a whole nother book, but yeah, other than that, let's look for some more pictures. This is kind of going over some of the same stuff that I talked about, but it's being more specific about how they apply to the game. All right, here we go. Painting Orcs and Goblins. Looks like we have another picture of that, a different angle, that first one we saw. And what we see here is orcs with spears. Looks like some boars, probably a chariot. Orcs with hand weapons. And up here you have orcs with bows on the fort. Now the orcs with bows are laughed at by the rest of the orcs because they're seen as unorkish, unmanly to be using a bow in combat, but there they are doing it. Here we have some painting advice. I think that's in the newer books too. Here you can see the regular goblins. I don't know if you've seen them yet. Not night goblins. You see they're not wearing hoods or anything, and they got these kind of square shields. Really uncommon, especially nowadays. With Age of Sigmar, the regular goblins are kind of a thing of the past. If people have goblins, they're playing night goblins. Here we see some savage orcs. Notice the war paint on them. This right here is a shaman, one of the magic casters. Down here you'll see some variations of squig, attack squigs. Over here is to the excuse me. Over here you see a funny model, and what you see is a night goblin with a spear, but on it for bait he has tied a snotling. So that's what I'm talking about. Snotlings get the worst of it. They really do. There it is, tied up right there. Uses bait as these squig herders try to prod the squigs in the right direction so they kill the enemies. And here we have some wolves. They're kind of modeled after like a Genghis Khan theme with their hats and all. And you got some boars on the right. Oh, I really hope we find a picture of a snot wagon. We got war machines. This is a good one. I killed a lot of people in the game, of course, with this what do you call it, Doom Driver catapult. So instead of firing a rock, it launches the goblin with some kind of makeshift wing attachment, and he goes flying in, tries to steer himself. And the whole reason behind that is some goblins, you know, their life is miserable. They're constantly bullied, so some of them want to go out with a bang and take out some people with them. So once again, you could use it to take out some heavily armored units because the armor doesn't do anything when you have a goblin flying at you. Here we see another battle taking place. Orcs and goblins versus a different faction of humans called Britannia, which are really heavily modeled after the medieval knight. And the only new things here we see is a wyvern. Oh, and in the far corner, you can see a pump wagon. But yeah, I'll have to show you another video with a closer picture of that. And actually, I don't have it with me in the state, but I own 1 or 2 pump wagons. And it'd be really cool if I could get my models over here from where they're at and show you guys. I got a bunch of models, and I actually have some here too. So, on second thought, I could show you guys some models. How about the heroes? And this is also something you're not going to see Age of Sigmar, but this is a person writing about a battle. So it's an entire battle write-up. And before we begin, now he's going to talk about orcs and all this stuff. And then it should say, oh, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think they're going to talk about a battle. A full page of lore. This is a really cool picture. I remember looking at this a long time ago and being inspired by the fantasy as a kid. But here you really see the chaotic nature of night goblins. You see right here a night goblin prodding an angry, hungry looking squig. You see 2 fanatics all drugged out. Look at their faces, look at their tongues. They're all drugged out. Look at this guy right here. He's so drugged out, he's got an arrow through his head, and he's happy about it. You can see the stupid troll looking over the whole thing. But this is the Battle of Eastgate. I believe they just went and butchered some dwarves just with sheer numbers and chaos. Even the dwarves are way better fighters. They couldn't stop it. Anyways, that looks like everything for this book, and I'm going to stop the video. But I got a lot more books here, but I will, if anyone wants to make a rain check, I will show you everything I talked about and thought was in this book, but wasn't. I definitely have it in a book, but I've got a lot of workbooks. At the end here, you see, looks like a conversion. And that's the other thing you don't see in Age of Sigmar at all, 100%. They used to show you conversions. And what I mean by that is this is not a stock model. This model someone altered with either pieces of plastic or parts from a different model, and they customized it. And they used to display these and show them off and even show you how to do them. But nowadays, they disallowed it and definitely not showing it in the books, and I don't think you're allowed to use them in the game anymore either. But that is a quick review of this book. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know. I could definitely make more easily. It was kind of fun talking about it, and I was happy to show you guys that.